Just after midnight, I first heard a clear and upbeat statement inviting all guests to a special midnight buffet on Deck 7 was broadcast softly over the ship's paw. Like a trap posing as an invitation, the words made me uneasy when they shouldn't have. Lucas Morgan is my name. I'm 32 years old, a freelance photographer from San Diego, and I'm taking this trip to get away from the hectic life at work. Ships have always captivated me because of the way they hover between social interaction and solitude. I'm usually quiet and careful, but I'm naturally perceptive and always pick up on little information that others miss. Despite my nagging discomfort, something about the announcement drew me out of my cabin that evening. The carpet in the hallway muffled my footsteps, and the lights flickered as if they weren't sure if they should remain on. The air felt thicker, almost electric, although there was a faint hum of engines vibrating through the walls. At the first corner, I stopped and froze. Before I could bring my attention to it, a shadow darted past the end of the passageway. With my camera thrown over my shoulder, I headed toward Deck 7. The corridor seemed to expand and curve slightly with each step, as though the spacecraft itself was trying to hold me up. There was a subtle scent that was overly sweet and unfamiliar to anyone I knew. The chill running up my spine told me it was nerves, but I denied it. Then I caught sight of him. At the far end of the hall, a man wearing a black vest emerged with a crystal glass. His smile was courteous, but it was too broad and motionless. There was nobody else. I approached and saw a traveler take a similar glass before disappearing a few seconds later. Behind the closed hall doors, the music and laughter went on as if nothing had happened. "Something's wrong," I muttered into my recorder, thinking that recording this might help me to stabilize. Individuals, they disappear. The crew, they pretend not to notice. This isn't typical, and I don't know why. A quiet giggle came from the threshold of the hall. For a split second, I caught a glimpse of a pallid face grinning from within as the door creaked a little. Then it was gone. With my heart pounding, I took a deep breath and pushed myself forward. The man in black was raising his glass toward me as if to toast me while the corridor seemed to go on forever. I was still unaware that this was the start of a world that would be invisible to other passengers. There was no sleep. My heartbeat quickened with each creak and distant thump. The ship no longer felt like a ship. Instead, it felt alive, observing, and changing underfoot. I kept thinking about the passengers who had disappeared, their grins lingering in the empty corridors, frozen in my memory. At approximately 11:30 p.m., I departed my cabin once more. It was quieter than normal in the hallway, leading to Deck 7. Shadows lengthened as lights flashed in and out. Delicate glass clinks broke the quiet as soft laughter floated from somewhere above. There were footsteps, but they weren't just mine. The corridor was different. Darkened carpets with some moist spots. A door was slightly open, and a dim glimmer of warm light came from it. A distorted, golden waltz that was at once appealing and menacing drifted out. The black-clad man reappeared with his glass in hand. I didn't approach. A young woman with a drink in her hand and a courteous smile came out. Only a few drops of her drink remained on the floor before she disappeared. My heart leaped. With the camera rolling, I stepped closer in an attempt to catch the impossibility. Mirrors and doors sprang up where none had been before. I caught a glimpse of passengers unblinking, two wide smiles as they stared at me from reflections with hollow eyes. I slammed the door of a cabin and ducked inside. As I gathered my breath, the draperies swayed, but there was no breeze, and the furniture moved slightly. My camera wavered. There was a gentle banging coming from the closet, closer, then quiet. Tap, tap, tap. In search of a safe path, I tried the stairwell. The doors opened, but I didn't recognize the corridor where the stairwell led. Water gathered along the sides. The black-clad man waited at the far end, and behind him the people who had disappeared appeared, grinning despite their wetness. They didn't move their lips, yet their hollow, never-ending laughter flooded my head. That's when I discovered that the ship did more than just physically trap people. It distorted time, memory, and perception. The people who took the beverages vanished, but their influence persisted, helping to direct the subsequent victims. Now I was the next. I knew better than to follow, but curiosity, or maybe fear, kicked me along. The music grew louder as the corridor stretched, yet it seemed oddly distorted, as if it were being played underwater. I could almost feel the lovely perfume's aroma curling around me. It felt like the ship itself was resisting my advances, making each step more difficult. I stopped beside a wall of mirrors. I saw passengers I had never seen before, all of them staring at me reflected in it. One man smiled calmly and courteously as he held up a glass toward me. Then he disappeared, blinking. Nothing was caught by my camera. "This isn't real. This isn't real," I muttered, but my voice sounded distant and muted, like if I were speaking underwater. One more step. A drop of water fell upon my hand from above. I winced. "Join us," a whisper behind me said, and I swung around, but the hallway was deserted. All that remained was the music, gentle yet unrelenting, enveloping the floor and walls. In the distance, just out of my line of sight, I heard the faint chuckling of passengers I didn't recognize. I attempted to go back, but the passageway had changed. The stairs felt farther than I remembered, and doors appeared where none had previously existed. Each door was slightly open, letting in a little light. I could see shadows moving within, but there was no sound. Then, from a door marked 1713, there was a single, slow, deliberate knock. I stepped forward, hesitant. Inside, a big table in immaculate condition was prepared for a magnificent feast. There were sparkling glasses and gleaming plates, but nobody was seated. Then a black-clad figure reappeared right behind the table, raising a glass toward me. Still too wide, his eyes were unnervingly serene, and he smiled nicely. With my hands shaking, I muttered to my recorder, "I don't know how, but they're here." When I turned around, I saw a smiling person in a white outfit holding a glass. She vanished as she took a sip. Dread tightened as my gut twisted. The gentle tunes grew louder. Every chuckle and every note that was smashed into my chest made me question my sanity. The corridors turned into a labyrinth. With caution, I moved, my flashlight piercing the darkness to reveal twisted hallways, flickering lights, and walls that were too close. My shoes were soaked by the puddles of water beneath them. In sickening waves, the scents of perfume and seawater mixed together. Doors opened on their own. I caught a glimpse of passengers, halted in mid-step, their mouths moving silently, their eyes wide but blind. With my heart pounding, I staggered by them when I heard someone mutter, "Take a drink." I nearly turned, nearly gave in. Once more, I located the dining hall. A single chandelier cast a feeble glow over the feast. The table was lined with empty cups that seemed to be waiting for me. At the corners of my vision, shadows moved. Then the black-clad man at the far end reappeared, making another glass gesture. The chandelier swung furiously as I retreated, creating flickering shadows that moved like shifting shapes. My camera wavered. From the walls themselves, the passengers I had seen before were now approaching me. They had wet, pallid faces and were grinning. Unrelenting, hollow laughter reverberated inside my mind. Desperate to get out, I attempted the stairwell. However, it took me back into the same hallway, where the music was louder than before and the whispers were humming in time with my heartbeat. My voice was distorted and overlaid with unidentified voices as my recorder crackled, playing back my own voice. I paused close to door 713, another steady, purposeful knock. It was everything I could do not to open it. A quiet shiver of cold laughter escaped from within. The passage appeared to go on forever as the music reached a peak. Rather than walking, the passengers glided in perfect formation, hovering just above the ground. I staggered back, almost tripping into a pool that mirrored the ceiling, but instead of my face, I saw dozens of them grinning right at me. Then I saw it, just one little detail. There was movement in their smiles. As I watched, they became wider. I realized then that the spacecraft wasn't merely trapping them. They were being eaten by it. Story 72, Part 5, the midnight buffet I ran. And now it wanted me. All of my hallways led back to the same hall. Glasses tinkled without contact as the chandelier swung over the feast table. In an attempt to catch my breath, I pressed against the wall. My recorder went on, creating jumbled chants as distorted voices layered over one another. The black-clad guy reappeared, closer this time, moving across the floor with ease. His smile was impossible to contain. Passengers appeared behind him from mirrors, walls, and even the puddles under my feet. With their eyes fixed on mine, they moved in perfect harmony, silent yet menacing. I made a grab for any door. I opened it. Just the dark. The lights are normal, the bed is unaltered. Then I saw my recorder sitting on the desk, though. Playback was in progress. A gentle tap reverberated on my cabin door as I repeated in a whisper, "Take a drink, join us," slow, methodical. I remained motionless. The handle of the door shook. Every nerve in my body screamed as my heart raced. A shadow then moved across the window. The reflection, not outdoors. Behind me, I turned around, nothing. Only the dense, weighty, living air. Then came the lovely, subtle scent of perfume wafting in. Untouchable crystal, glistening with liquid. I kept my hands off of it. I am unable to. Nevertheless, I am unable to leave the cabin. I'm on the ship, it always does, and from somewhere through the walls comes the faint, distorted sound of travelers laughing. I'm not sure if I'll sleep this evening, perhaps tomorrow, or at any time. Awaiting you is the midnight buffet. Shaking and attempting to gather myself, I ducked into a tiny alcove down the hallway. My shoes were squelching in the puddles on the floor, and my hands were drenched. The distant music sounded distorted as if it were playing underwater, and it was playing more slowly now. If you're listening, take a second to subscribe to Midnight Outcry. It helps keep stories like this alive. My voice trembled, but for some reason, speaking it out loud kept me grounded. I fumbled for my voice recorder. Ahead was another corridor. Like fresh water leaking through the metal, the walls gleamed. It wasn't the light, but I thought I saw a shadow move. A faint clink reverberated behind me, and my pulse leaped. I looked around, but nothing was there. Only the dim silhouette of a door, its edges leaking light. I approached it cautiously, one step at a time. To the touch, the grip felt warm. When the door opened, there was nothing but pitch blackness. Nevertheless, I sensed that someone was observing me. A low laugh wrapped around the walls, harsh but merry. Was it a whisper, or was I nearly tripping? Passed by my neck. Another puddle farther down reflected the ceiling, but it wasn't me. Pale, smiling faces swirled in the water, some of them damp as though they had just been taken from the ocean. One trembled and sought for me. I leaped back and struck the wall. Once more, the music twisted and grew strangely, as if the ship were breathing. I staggered into what appeared to be a dining room, a scaled-down version of the buffet hall with distorted and leaking tables. And the man in black, sitting quietly, raised his glass toward me. His eyes were riveted, his smile impossible. "You cannot hide," he whispered quietly. The voice reverberated in my brain. "It's time to come along." I ran. The puddles reflected the endless ocean rather than the floor. The floor underneath me was no longer solid, and my shoes sank as the water rose abnormally quickly. Every hallway felt like a circle, with walls that bent and twisted as if they weren't supposed to be there. I went by a cabin with the number 1713, which I recognized from earlier. I went cold. Slowly, the door opened. A glass in a pallid hand was extended. I took off running. Faint laughter slipped into the quiet hum of the motors as the floor beneath me trembled. The twisted melody grew louder somewhere in the distance, as though it were pleading with me to give up. My chest ached. "Just a sip, just one sip," the voices murmured, as I ducked into a corner, gasping for oxygen. Ahead, the corridor split, impossible architecture once more. Unreal passages were reflected by mirrors. Then a door at the end of the hall gleamed a little, weakly. The warm, ominous radiance beckoned. I'm aware that I might never get back if I walk through it, but my gut tells me that I'm already lost. The glow at the end of the passage pulsed quietly, like a heartbeat, and before I could think, my legs moved in response to the sweetest voice, almost intimate, curling into my ear. "We've been waiting for you." The music bounced off walls that didn't appear to exist, and every footfall reverberated strangely. My flashlight blinked wildly, creating shadows that weren't mine. Some of the shapes stretched, bent, and reached for me, but when I blinked, they vanished. Now, the distorted waltz of music was louder, bringing laughing that seemed unnaturally close. Water rose over my shoes as I continued, my chest burning. Iron, salt, and something else, something rotted, and somehow sweet, were the smells of the air. The door ahead was brighter. As I got closer, I saw that it was actually a passageway into a magnificent hall that was half flooded, half real, and half impossible, rather than a door. Unaffected by the surrounding water, guests sat at tables, raising their drinks with unwavering but genuine smiles. They had hollow eyes that reflected nothing but fear and unending pools, and in the middle, the black-clad man stood motionless, glass up, smiling. "You arrived," he replied quietly, my bones soaked with his voice. "We have been waiting." I attempted to back off, but the ground beneath me moved. The corridors I had just passed through now materialized behind me, twisting and looping like if the ship had come to life. Water lapped my knees as I stumbled over a twisted chair. From the lake came a gentle knock, then another, and yet another. Unpredictable and chaotic, not everything in rhythm. The knocking from every table and every water reflection became closer and louder until it reached a deafening symphony. A figure hovered close to the ceiling, a traveler from a previous deck, arms extended, face unrecognizable, pale and dripping. "Come along," it murmured. It sounded like 1,000 voices, all blended together. I felt sick to my stomach. I ran in the direction of what I believed to be the exit, but the hall seemed to go on forever, with doors and hallways bending and walls that breathed. Wet hands reached for me as another table of drowned diners emerged from the lake. Their smiles were broad, calm, and incredibly forbearing. Abrupt flash. I was back in the hallway, the water still rising, the illumination gone. Behind me, I heard glasses clinking softly. I ventured a look. The man in black was approaching me in a composed manner, creating shadows rather than water ripples with each step. He said calmly, almost in a conversational tone, "You can't leave." "It's your turn." I ran heedlessly. On either side, mirrors emerged, reflecting images of people other than myself. In one, I was seated at a table, grinning and holding a drink. In another, I was unaware that my body was floating face down in water. Abruptly, the stairwell emerged. Splashing my feet, I went for it. However, it wasn't the stairs at all when I opened the door. It was my cabin, dark and deserted but familiar. I felt a wave of relaxation, until the smallest clink came from the corridor. I went cold. The black-clad man with the glass was standing outside my door. He gently tipped it in my direction. A dozen shadowy creatures approached stealthily behind him, their features smiling, their eyes hollow, and they all raised their glasses at the same time. With my flashlight on the ground and my heart pounding, I retreated into my cabin. The beam trembled. Then the sluggish, distorted music drifted out from under the door once more. I wanted to scream, flee, or do anything else, but the hallway went on and on. The same message was conveyed by every door, mirror, whisper, and shadow. "It's time to join us." I closed my eyes, hoping it was a bad dream. However, the glass was on my bedside table when I opened them, dripping condensation as though it had just been spilled. The laughter is still audible to me. Even as I write this, I am aware that if I drink even one sip, I will never again leave this ship.